Hi everyone, Tiffany from the Iowa here. I have a question for you. Before the development of weather monitoring tools and equipment, how did ancient sailors predict the weather before they set sail or while they were already out to sea? Can you imagine? No weather satellites telling us what to expect in a few hours to a few days. They had to completely rely on their own observations of the world around them. They would observe what direction and how strong the wind was blowing, what color the sky was at sunrise and sunset, if there was a pale ring or halo of light around the moon at night, the size and shape of the swells in the ocean, and the cloud coverage, the size, color, and shape of the clouds in the sky. While these observations didn't always lead them in the right direction when it came to predicting weather, humans have developed a whole bunch of tools that help us out today. We're going to make 4 videos talking about some of these tools and make simplified versions of them at home for our next 4 weekly STEAM challenges. One of the earliest tools developed to help monitor the weather was the Windsock. It would help us determine which direction and what strength the wind was blowing in. A windsock is basically a cloth cone with a big opening at the base of the cone and a small opening at the tip. They'd be hung on poles using either rope or twine, and when the wind would blow, it would enter the larger opening of the cone, create a bunch of air pressure within the cone itself so that it would point out in the direction the wind was blowing. And you could tell how strong the wind was depending on the angle between the pole your windsock was hanging on and the windsock itself. So if the windsock was relaxed and hanging against the pole, the wind wasn't blowing or wasn't strong at all. But if the windsock was pointed straight out from the pole, that's some pretty strong wind. No one is sure when the windsock was first invented, but it's thought to have been made in Japan or China. Specifically, Japan used them to celebrate a holiday called Boys' Day. Every household would hang a windsock in the shape of a carp outside for the father and every son in their family. Ancient Romans also used the windsock as battle standards or flags. Windsocks are still in use today and can be found at airports, chemical plants, and along really windy highways. Your STEAM challenge for this week is to make a really simple windsock that's capable of telling us which direction the wind is blowing. For this project, you're going to need a few supplies, starting with paper and napkins. Then you need some sort of string or twine. If you don't have this at home, you can use yarn or even an old shoelace. You'll need scissors, tape or a stapler, not both, and some art supplies to decorate your windsock. We also need a pencil that's going to be used at the end to actually poke a hole through our windsock in order to tie our twine. If you want to decorate your windsock, before we start is definitely the time to do it. You'll want to pick up your paper and hold it so it's longer on the top than it is on the sides, because that's the direction you want your drawing to go. We're going to be wrapping this paper in a tube like this for our windsock, so you're going to be decorating it in this direction. Now that you have your paper decorated, it's time to roll it into that tube I showed you earlier. So you want to just take the paper and roll it into that tube so it looks like this. Now we need a way to secure it. This is where the staplers or the tape comes in. You can use staples at either end where my fingertips are to close your tube, or you can tape it. I'm gonna go ahead and use both actually and try to secure it really well. You definitely need to make sure there's enough overlap if you're using a stapler so that you catch both sides of the paper when you staple. Alright, so there's my staples. And grab my tape. I'm just going to secure the rest of this. It's not going to be a very effective windsock if air is leaking out of it along this seam right here. So that's why I wanted to use both. The staples to secure the end and the tape to seal this seam right here. So now we have our sealed tube and we're ready to add some tails to it. In order to make our tails, I'm gonna be using napkins. They're really thin, nice wavy paper that'll blow in the breeze. If you don't have a napkin at home, you can always use crepe paper if you have any of that. Any of the gift wrap paper that you stuff in bags will work, newspaper, or even paper towel. So with my napkin unfolded, I'm just gonna follow the seams from the folds, and I'm going to cut this into a strip. This would be a really big tail left this size for our windsock. As you can see, it's as big as the tube itself. So we're gonna cut this down again, just by cutting down the middle of it. And then I'm actually gonna cut these pieces in half one more time. So now we have these 4 pieces that we're ready to attach as our tails to our windsock. So what we're gonna do is lay our tube down. Now we're going to take some tape. Just going to take a piece of tape. You're going to lay a good portion of your tail inside your tube like this. And you're just gonna tape it in place right there. So we have it there. Just going to tape it so that it's stuck in place right there. And you're gonna do that with each one of these 4 strips. So now that we have our nice fluffy tails attached to our windsock, it's time to create the holes that we're going to tie our twine to or string to. To do that, you're going to need a sharpened pencil or a mechanical pencil, and being very careful of your fingers, you're just going to poke the pencil right through the paper at the base here. So again, very careful of your fingers, or have an adult help you if you need help with this part. And you're just going to poke your pencil right through the paper to create a hole. So we have one on that side, and we're going to go to the other side. Sorry, Mr. Fish, you're going to get a hole poked through you. You want them to be as close to directly across from each other as you can, but if they're a little crooked, it's not too bad. And we have our second hole. So now we have our holes prepped for our twine. Can lay this back down, grab, this thing does not want to sit still, grab our twine. So you want a pretty big piece of twine. I'm gonna say probably about 2 feet, because we're gonna have to put knots in it to make sure the paper actually stays on the twine when the wind hits it and it doesn't fly away. So we're gonna take this, and you'll take one end of your twine and you'll stick it to the inside of your tube. And once it's on the inside of your tube, you just wanna start forming little knots. I am not the best person at tying knots. One of my co-workers, Miss Marianne, is actually gonna be showing us all how to tie knots on a future STEAM challenge video. But for now, I'm doing just really small little knots, one right on top of the other, trying to make a big ball basically of twine that won't slip through the hole we made. Just keep making knots, keep making it bigger and bigger until you think it's big enough not to slip through. So I have it pretty knotted up, and it's not gonna come through the hole that we made. Okay, so there's one side. You wanna take the other side, and you're gonna do the exact same thing through the twine on this side, and you're just gonna start tying knots again. Now that we have our finished windsock, the last thing left to do is to find a nice place outside to hang it up and start measuring which direction the wind is blowing. You don't have to make your windsock exactly like this. If you want to try testing different prototypes and designs, you can always try making one that's cone-shaped and see if it affects how sensitive your windsock is to the wind. Please share your windsocks with us on Facebook at the Virtual Education at the Battleship Iowa page, or email us at education@labattleship.com. Until next week, have a good one.